Welcome to Red Vest Live. I'm Alexandra Sasha Gorishek, and today's topic is Redefining Aid, Innovative Funding Mechanisms for the Future of Humanitarian Action. We will explore the challenges of traditional funding, a new insurance model for disaster response, and how localized funding has empowered the Colombian Red Cross. Joining us today are, on my left here, Nena Stojilkovic, Undersecretary General for Global Relations, Humanitarian Diplomacy and Digitalization at IFRC. Welcome. And Sophie Munk, Director of the Humanitarian Innovative Financing Hub at the Danish Red Cross. Welcome, Anne-Sophie. And Tiziana Bonzon, Head of IFRC's delegation in Colombia. They will share their insights on how these funding mechanisms are shaping the future of humanitarian action and how localizations plays a key role. So first, I will turn to you, Nena, if I may. What would you say are the key challenges in securing traditional funding for humanitarian aid, and why is it important to explore innovative funding mechanisms, as we call them?
Thank you, Sasha. The main challenge, of course, is that crisis and the number of them surpass the funding available to deal with them. It's just as simple as that. Mm-hmm. When we look at the world and 120 conflict situations coupled with climate change events and migration that's caused by all those events, we simply do not have enough of traditional government grants funding to support all of those crises. And maybe just to put one number out of the OCHA coordinated appeals, and OCHA is the UN humanitarian coordinator agency, of the 53 billion of the ask, only 40% gets funded. This is the result for this year, and for IFRC also, in terms of our own emergency appeals that we coordinate for our member national societies, the numbers are very similar. So we simply do not have enough money in traditional hands. The second reason is that the perhaps sector is not as efficient as it could be. There is some duplication, there is some inefficiency in the sector, and we, as the organization of local actors and local members, and Tiziana will talk more about that, we are able to deliver aid locally where those crises happen. Therefore, we need to look at the way how to fund locally more and local actors, and that's not that easy for a variety of reasons. The third reason is that between development and humanitarian actors, there is not a real deal, and they go in different places at different pace. And what we, as the largest humanitarian network in the world, are trying to say is that if we invest more in resilience, in preparedness, in anticipatory action, and that's where the humanitarians can actually come in at the community level to build that resilience, we will save a lot of money from response. So the idea would be to put €1 into resilience and save 6 to 7 euros in response. So these three things combined make it very, very difficult to rely on one set of funds, predominantly coming from the governments, and on top of that, many of them are decreasing their humanitarian budgets. That is why we are looking at some new ways, whether it is expanding the network of government donors to new countries, emerging donors, or including, in particular, private sector, where most of the solutions and interesting structures could potentially come in. So that's kind of my response to your question, but we need to work together to come up with those solutions.
Thank you for that. One of these innovative mechanisms is the Humanitarian Innovative Finance Hub. What is its role, and how can it support national societies interested in these solutions?
So thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Nena. Thank you, Tiziana. So the Humanitarian Innovative Finance Hub, that we're calling the HIF Hub, is an initiative we launched in January 23, together with the IFRC, the ICRC, the Kenya Red Cross, and hosted by the Danish Red Cross. We also now have the Swedish Red Cross. So the aim of the hub is to build the learning and experience on innovative finance and be a support for the whole movement. So I think one of the first things we started with is to define what is actually innovative finance and kind of demystify it a bit, unpack the concept, see what's going on in the movement. A lot is going on in IFRC, ICRC, and different national societies. And what can we then learn in the movement if we bring these experiences together and work together on this, always having our different projects depending on the different organizations and their mandates, but what's the added value of bringing the learning and expertise together. So what we offer is that we are working on 3 key tracks. So support to portfolio building. So one of the challenges or one of the ways to attract the private sectors to have these investable projects. So I think very much what we've also discussed, Nena, previously is that this is about amplifying the ways we finance. So it's not about building new projects with new financing. Sometimes that might be a way, but I think what we've also learning is to look at programs that are already strong, like the draft that you worked a lot on, Nena, and that you will speak about as well, and then see how can we have the grant funding, how can we amplify the financing and bring in other new ways of financing. So that's really, so just to go back to support on building projects. Second, of course, capacity building, training, what are the learnings in IFRC, what are the learnings in national societies, how can we make sure we support and exchange those, and the last one is to see everything that's going out on in the sector. It's a big theme. People are doing it, it's coming. What can we learn from that? How can we bring those learnings into our movement, and how can we also share our learnings? So those 3 things we can offer, and I can always go more into that, but just that's the overview.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. And Nena, you already mentioned implementation by local actors, and now Tiziana is going to talk about that. Globally, only 1.2% of humanitarian funding is implemented by local actors, but more than 80% of IFRC draft funding is channeled through them. How has this funding increased the presence of the Colombian Red Cross in communities?
Thank you so much, Sasha, and really a pleasure to be able to a little bit zoom on the Colombian experience. Of course, DREF is a strategic and critical instrument for the IFRC, and the entire network of national societies have been actually benefiting from this instrument for the past 45 years. This year we are commemorating the 45th anniversary of the DREF. And why Colombia? Well, the very first allocation was actually done in 1979 in Colombia. 200,000 Swiss francs were allocated in that year. We were not even called the International Federation, by the way. We were called the League in those days. And it was done to respond, to help the national society, the Colombia Red Cross, to respond to flooding. So for the past 45 years, the instrument has evolved, and we already heard about the new innovative ways of using it and where the DREF is going. But I think not only has helped the national society to bring crucial humanitarian aid to people impacted by particularly flooding, which we've seen really increasing over the past 45 years, not a surprise with climate change. Most of the responses that are happening in Colombia are related to climate, water in particular, so flooding, flash floods, but also drought. Last year, for instance, the consequence of El Niño was very much about dryness, heat waves, and lack of water. But we've also seen DREF being used more and more for actions such as anticipatory action. In Colombia, for instance, you have a lot of volcanoes that are still very active. Last year, it was used to support anticipatory action interventions that the Colombia Red Cross implemented to support communities who were preparing for a possible eruption of the volcano Nevada de Ruiz. And this year, we did the same in relation to a possible eruption of the volcano Purase. This means that the national society is not only able to reach communities when something happens, but very much to build on that resilience that you were talking about, Nena, and preparing communities in wonderful ways. Just to give a very concrete example of how DREF has actually allowed communities to take anticipatory action that were vital for them in the context of the Nevada, for instance. When you have an alert for a volcanic eruption, usually one of the first measures is evacuation, right? You ask communities to move away from the areas that could be at risk. But evacuations don't always come with a subsidy, right? So when people actually move, they are disconnected from their livelihoods and they have to find other ways. DREF was instrumental through cash contributions to allow families to continue, for instance, providing for the families, sending the kids to school, all of those things that the government wasn't always able to provide. So we have to think in a much broader sense. And I just like to say that, yes, it has been absolutely critical. Just to give you a couple of figures, over the past 10 years, 15 DREF operations were implemented in Colombia. We helped more than 500,000 people and mobilized approximately 14.5 million Swiss francs to support the national society.
Thank you, Tiziana. So Tiziana, Nena talked about DREF and the 45th anniversary, which we are marking this year. But there's also this new part to IFRC DREF that you have already announced at the United Nations General Assembly about a month ago. And here we are today at the International Conference of the Red Cross and Red Crescent. And I would really love for you to talk to us about this new insurance mechanism that aims to completely transform disaster response.
Absolutely, and pleasure to do so. In fact, next week we have a DREF pledging conference, and part of the pledging will also be a discussion on this insurance mechanism. DREF is a fund that's currently reaching a size of 100 million that allows us to support around 80 plus national societies every year, and Tiziana talked about Colombian example. For us to grow it 5 times over the last 5 years, going back to what I said on the state of the humanitarian finance, it was absolutely not possible to do it through traditional government donor sources. We had some involvement by private sector, I would say minimal, in terms of also providing grants into DREF, but the real opportunity came when we structured an insurance product for DREF. It is the innovative way of generating income into the fund, and what it meant is, in simple terms, is we bought insurance for DREF. We insured DREF fund, a pot of money. We insured by purchasing insurance policy for 3 million Swiss francs, which, when released, when triggered, is giving us 5 times more income into DREF. We were happy to announce at the UN General Assembly that it just triggered. Not that we're happy about the number of crises that allowed us to reach a threshold within the fund disbursements to then have a call on the insurance policy, but happy to demonstrate that this instrument actually can be triggered and can release up to 15 million Swiss francs by the end of the year into any new DREFs. This is a unique instrument. It has never been done on the insurance indemnity basis in the humanitarian sector, and our encouragement to other humanitarian agencies is to explore this type of instruments. We worked for 2 to 3 years on structuring it with Aon and its reinsurers. It was a labor of love, as the Aon CEO says, a lot of pro bono support and people's input into something that no one knew whether we could make work. In the end, we did, and our hope is that through this instrument, not only that DREF has reached its optimal size at this moment of 100 million, but that we can also grow DREF and also explore this instrument in other humanitarian financing instruments that IFRC will come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Nena. And next week, as you mentioned, exciting days ahead. The DREF Pledging Conference is happening in Geneva just a week from tomorrow, right? So really looking forward to that. Back to you, Anne-Sophie. Can you give us a few examples of national societies who benefited from these innovative mechanisms, especially as related to the Humanitarian Innovative Financing Hub?
Yeah. No, thank you, Sasha. I think important to stress it's not a quick fix, and since we're still a bit new, I mean, we can't say we already have national societies benefiting, but we have a lot of interest, especially also related to the financial sustainability agenda, where there's a lot of things going on. So I think, speaking to your point and on insurance, so I think one of the DREF insurance has sparked a lot of interest, I think, to engage, but also conversations on how could insurance maybe work at country level. Like, could the next step be to engage with national societies and see like what country-specific insurance could be relevant. So we have a collaboration with the Danish Red Cross and Malawi Red Cross on flood insurance. So to look at country level floods is something that you can predict. You have a lot of, I think, data is absolute key. Also for the, of course, insurance for DREFs. If you have data on a specific issue, you can see this happens maybe every 10 years. Can you somehow build up a system or an insurance that can help you when the disaster strikes? So those are some of the initial projects that are starting. We also are working with other national societies, also initiative led by the IFRC and the British Red Cross on an endowment fund. So the idea that you have a pot of money that you want to grow into a bigger pot of money, so you also have something down the line. So for longer term capacity building or reconstruction after conflict. So that's also an example of a project that we are supporting, but which is led by IFRC and other national societies. And I think maybe just the last point, there's a lot of interest in impact investments. So, you know, looking at investment that bring financial return, but also social return. We're not into that quite yet, but there's a lot of interest, and it's also really also a way to see how can results be linked to financing, and how can this also be kind of an incentive structure. And then, as you were saying about efficiency and making sure we do the right thing and things that really benefit the people that we work with, this might also be an incentive structure. That's a bit of a cliffhanger because we're not quite doing it in the movement yet, but there's interest internally and there's also external actors doing that. So those are just a couple of examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne-Sophie. And if we stay with national societies and local actors, Tiziana, what are the tangible benefits of providing local actors with greater autonomy in disaster response?
You know, each DREF operation is a learning experience and is an opportunity to build capacities. When we talk about local actors, we're talking about primarily three things: the ability to deliver aid in the most direct way to people who need it, but also the necessity to have a local actor that is accountable, that is respected, that is relevant, and this is what DREF does. Because DREF is not just a fund; it is primarily a fund where you have resources, financial resources, but there's a whole world around it. There's a world of training, of lessons learned, of building systems, building capacities. So this is why DREF is, and rightly so, truly positioned as a strategic instrument to support the localization agenda, which for us is intrinsic to who we are. So it allows a national society to bring aid and assistance quickly, but it also helps the national society to become stronger every time that they implement a DREF operation. So you know, it's something that we have to keep talking about, innovating, of course, because DREF has evolved over the past 45 years. It used to be primarily a loan, it became a grant, and now we're using it for anticipatory action, and it helps the national society see how the world is changing, and through the DREF, improve their response, improve their preparedness, and the way they bring assistance to communities.
Thank you, Tiziana and Sophie and Nena, and thank you for being with us. And don't forget to watch us live at Red Vest Live today and tomorrow still. Thank you.